that's what they do. They have phone banks. So when I was teaching high school, I used to offer my students extra credit if they went to work for one of the county party organizations. A lot of times they were making them sit at the phone, call people and tell them to go vote or something like that. They hated it, but it's what they do, right? They get out the vote. And so they're raising money. You can donate money to parties, and they will use that to rally those voters and get them out to the polls. Of course, in your reading, you saw that the state parties hold biennial state conventions where they will meet. For the states, the Republicans and the Democrats will meet in convention and make decisions like, okay, what is our platform going to be? What is important to Texas Republicans? What is important to Texas Democrats? That might be different than what is important to New York Republicans or New York Democrats. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the semester a study done by Richard Florida where he looked at the most conservative and the most liberal counties in the states. So Texas had the most conservative and New York had the most liberal. And within those counties, he asked people, okay, do you consider yourself conservative or liberal? Just within that county. How do they think about themselves? And then he asked them questions about, I think it was foreign policy and economic policy to see what they would say. And consistently, whether you were conservative or liberal, if you were in that New York county, you were more likely to be more liberal. Your answers were more liberal. If you were in the conservative Texas county, no matter if you were conservative or liberal, your answers were more conservative. So I use that example to illustrate how the National Democratic Party, the committee, the Republican National Committee, they understand that. And so the National Party is not requiring the states to have the same platforms because we're different across the states. So the states can come up with their own platforms. And what is a platform? Y'all read about it, so.
The ideas that a party runs
Good. The idea is that they're going to support and try to achieve? Something like that?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, good. Exactly. In different policy areas. So the platform is composed of planks. So planks about healthcare, planks about energy policies, planks about our water supply. Just have a variety of planks. And if you did the extra credit that's still out there for you to do, you probably saw that. There are a lot of different policy positions that they're taking within each of these topic areas. Good. So how important are those planks? How important are they to the candidates?
Very.
Very? They should be. Are they?
No, but I mean that's what they promote.
That's exactly right. They do, and I guess maybe they choose certain policies from the platform to focus in on. And then the others, not as important to them maybe, or maybe it's not part of that coalition that they're trying to reach. Yeah. So who is a platform important to? What'd you think? I mean, the candidates, it kind of gives them a direction.
The people.
The people.
And their party.
And their party, yes. People putting it together, right? So people who are active in the political party are usually more committed, right? And it's really important to them to get policies made in the way they think they should be made. So they'll get, they'll start contributing, attending the party meetings and conventions. And so it's very important to them. So the party platforms are more a reflection of the members of the party who are really involved than the candidates, right? Because it's the party putting this together. And it's more of the state or local level. What is important within that geographical jurisdiction for the party members. So, okay. And these links just go to the platforms for those parties. So in presidential years, when the party meets in the state convention, they are selecting the electoral college. Do y'all know how many members of Congress Texas sends to D.C.? 40?
Isn't it 43?
Well, we have 40 electoral college votes, don't we? Okay, now I'm getting confused. So I think, is it 38 members of Congress that we're sending? Does that sound right? I know it went up by 2, so I think it's 38. I think you're right. And then we have 40 electoral college votes, right? Yes, because we have the 2 senators. So, all right. In these state conventions, they select who are going to be the electoral college. So the state Democrats will select 40 people to be the electoral college. The state Republicans will select 40 people to be the electoral college. And then following the vote, like we've just had, then whoever wins the popular vote in our state, they get that electoral college. So that's why, the 40 went to Trump, because he got the most votes in the state. Yeah. So those electors from the Republican Party get to cast the ballots in a couple of weeks officially, declaring who's president. So these are people, it's a real honor to be an elector. And I think maybe we talked about it before, right? Yeah, you're not going to be an unfaithful one probably because you work really hard to get there. Okay, so the political parties do that too. Yeah.
How do the partial states work where they split votes?
Right, that's a good question, like with the political parties within them and who do they determine as electors?
So would they just take like the percentage of votes? So if they get like 80%, would they send 4? Like if they have 5, would they send 4 to them and then 1 to the other ones?
Yep.
That's how they do it.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. That's true, yes. So that's something, man, I don't think about much, but it does happen. Yeah,
Where do
in a few states.
Where do the members of the electoral college come from? Are they other politicians that just come from to
Yeah.
campaign to be part of it? Or?
Usually they're just people,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that have been very active in that party's organization.
But they just have like they have non-political jobs. They're just like
Usually.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually, they're just the party members
Okay.
who are not really political officials,
Cool.
but they have been supporting one person I know in the Republican Party went to every congressional district and was helping every Republican congressional district candidate help them get elected. They really wanted to be part of the electoral college.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is an honor.
Okay.
Can you imagine casting
Yeah.
the official vote for
Right.
president? Yeah. So we had that in our takeoff. All right, and just a few issues I selected to compare side by side. The 2 parties and planks, abortion access, reinstate right to an abortion versus seeing that right to life and equal protection to all preborn children from the moment of fertilization. So very different. Planks about abortion, school vouchers, and prohibit any attempt to fund private schools with public funds versus empower families to choose from public, private, charter, or homeschool options for the children's education, and the funding shall follow the student instead of going to the school. So different approaches. Now these are the planks and the platforms. Border security for the Democrats, demilitarize and scale back policing, saturation of border communities, and then legislature should create a border protection unit with authority to repel illegal, so more military on the 2 parties. So interesting to see them side by side, I think, and they're taking very clear, very strong stands that are very different and giving people who are following this a choice. So the party organization, grassroots up precincts are where it's easiest to get involved. All right, what election do you elect your precinct chair? How do we determine who's the precinct chair?
Primary election?
Yes, very good, yeah. So they will be running in the primary election, and that's when we vote them. So only, the Republicans are going to vote for the Republican precinct chair, and then Democrats are going to vote for the Democratic precinct chair during their primaries. Very good. And so that's kind of an easy way to get on the ladder if you're interested in becoming involved with the party, because oftentimes precincts don't have a chair. Nobody runs for that. So then, yeah, you could have that position and help run the primary. And of course, we looked at this before, your precinct number is there on your voter registration card, so you can see that. And then also we elect our county chair. for the different parties during that primary election. And then move on up the pyramid. But again, I wanted to emphasize that it's not like the national DNC is telling the state and local Democratic organizations what they need to do. They're aware that it needs to be a little bit different, although as we become more polarized, it seems like there's more of a close correlation from the national level to the local levels even. And that's just a handy image of how the party organizations are formed, the voters in the primary. Like y'all said, we're voting for the precinct chairs and county chairs, and then those will constitute the county executive committee. And then we have precinct convention following the primary, and then you move on up to, and you're supposed to elect delegates for the precinct convention, but sometimes it's only one person chair. And then they go to the county or senatorial district, and then the state, and then it has the state organization. Okay, so soft money are contributions that are given to the political party, not to a particular candidate. Soft money helps the party with their get out the vote and just getting people mobilized and ready for the election. These are in past election cycles. This wasn't the most recent time, but you can see, Tarrant County had a Libertarian Party. They had a brunch, people to come and give money to help that party. Then we had the Democrats in Mineral Wells walking for Beto O'Rourke, and had a Republican event here in Bastrop. So you can find that online. It's a party doing things to try to get people excited about the election and go vote. So that's soft money contributions. So we've had an evolution, or sometimes it's called realignment of political parties in our state, as we've talked about quite a bit. Post-Civil War to, your book says around, late 1970s, but I'd say around 1990s, because it was a process, it took a while. The Democrats had pretty much the predominant party in the state. And why was that? Why was the Democrat Party predominant?
Because they were pro-slavery.
Yes, because of slavery, yes. Because who opposed slavery? Did you say opposed slavery or they supported?
They supported.
They supported. Who opposed slavery?
Republicans.
Republicans. And they opposed the expansion of slavery. They weren't really against slavery initially. It wasn't until the Civil War was going on, the Gettysburg Address, that it became more about slavery itself. But, as I think your reading quiz talked about, it was the party of Lincoln, it was the Union who we were fighting against in the Civil War, was identified with the Republican Party. So most people in Texas wouldn't have anything to do with them. It's the party of Lincoln. And, I know people who are 2 generations older than me who used to call it the War of Northern Aggression. It's a civil war in their mind. So there was just this real reluctance to identify as Republican. So what happened? If you think about it, so the Democrats were the predominant party. They had a lot of power in the state. They held all the statewide offices. So in the mid-40s to the mid-70s, there were changes afoot. So think about, what was our Democratic Party like? What ideology did it support?
Anti-government. Anti-government involvement.
Anti-government involvement. Yes. Good. Okay. Does it sound more liberal or conservative?
Conservative.
Conservative nowadays, right? That's how that would be part of the conservative. So we were conservative Democrats, right? Yeah, we talked about that. So the Democratic Party had conservatives and liberals in it, but mostly conservatives, right? Because there was that supporting slavery and segregation and all that piece that was in that as well. So, fighting conservatism is one of those constants pretty much in Texas politics. So, what happened in the New Deal? Let me ask this. What preceded the New Deal? Why did we have a New Deal?
The Great Depression.
The Great Depression, right. And so what did the New Deal offer?
More jobs.
Jobs.
Government-sponsored jobs.
Government-sponsored jobs, exactly. And how did federalism change because of this? Do you remember it went from dual to, yeah, cooperative, very good, right? So the federal government's getting more involved. Initially, we were for that. We were Democrats, FDR Democrats. Part of that coalition supporting FDR and the New Deal, it was helping our state. But then over the course of the 30s, the New Deal was helping, but we still had a depression, and it wasn't getting enough better for people to keep on ascribing to the New Deal. Let's get more federal programs, and that's what FDR was trying to do, more federal involvement. And John Gardner, his vice president, 1936 from Texas, was one of the leaders that started kind of turning away from the New Deal, and he did not support what FDR was doing. He said this is too much federal government involvement. And we see this crack started forming in the Democratic Party and the leadership among those who were more liberal FDR Democrats versus the more conservative Democrats. So there's this vision that was starting. And then it was exacerbated by civil rights, the civil rights era. In the civil rights era, if you recall, Earl Warren, who was a Republican, was appointed as Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court by Dwight D. Eisenhower, another Republican. He got on the Supreme Court, and one of the first decisions they made was Brown v. Board of Education, desegregation, which did not comport, with a conservative ideology, especially here in the South and in states like Alabama and Mississippi. There's a lot of resistance to this. And then as the Earl Warren Court went on in the 1960s, they were deciding cases,
So the Republicanism or that idea and conservatism are not always, they're not always, okay.
No.
Because like the other radical Republicans with the ironclad oath, and then the Republicans with the Board of Education, and then conservatism is different, so.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I really appreciate that. Because I think so many people think they are synonymous. Republican, conservative, Democrat, liberal.
Right.
Right. But for years, there were liberal Republicans. Those were in the Northeast.
Right.
Maine Republicans were very liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're still around. So, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So can you like, I think conservatism and liberalism, they kind of make like why the change in republicanism and like Republican Democrat, like what? Because the United States is a democratic republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like why are they? What does that mean? Like Republican Democrat? What does that mean for this time?
Okay.
Like what are you talking about right now?
Okay. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm talking about where Republicans and Democrats had both conservative and liberal wings in them.
Right.
Right? So it just depended on what faction maybe within that coalition you were. So those economic conservatives in the Democratic Party started feeling a little nervous with the New Deal. And so they started thinking, no, we don't want this much government. And then also small government Democrats were thinking, maybe this is a little bit too much. So, but the Democratic Party was dominant in our state. And so if you wanted to win office, it would be a good idea if you were a Democrat, because Republicans, they weren't winning much. There were a few exceptions, in different parts of our state where the Republicans were stronger, maybe in the Hill Country, in German communities, Czech communities, there's a greater chance of Republicans being successful. But in many counties of our state, there wasn't even a Republican Party at that time. So that it's a big change that happened.
That is weird.
Mhm.
Okay, wait, I still don't get how we went from a complete switch.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
a
a
when and
major
why.
business.
Did it
Like,
have
I
to do with
can-
like the events like the Great Depression and then the World War II also like you kind of had to have government intervention, and so that kind of switched minds. I feel like then because Republicans now I feel like are yes they're anti-big government but they're also kind of pro-government and like the fact like big military, right? World War II would have had a big military, and then like I feel like Republicans more want like government aid, I guess. It would be like with Hurricane Harvey, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I see a lot of Republicans like, oh, the government, or like just with the recent hurricanes.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people like, oh, the government's not giving any money to North Carolina or Hawaii with fires. And so I feel like Republicans are also take that kind of stance when it comes to the government. I don't know, it's
I
a
agree.
weird, it's a weird
It is weird.
thing.
But now it's so synonymous with what they are things basically.
I'm confused.
So, yeah, sometimes you think ideology, so liberal here at the left and conservative here at the right, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it simple, it's like a model. But if you think about the very extremes, is it actually more of a circle?
Mm-hmm. The pendulum.
Or, well, it can be a pendulum. I've like that analogy too. It's a
Mhm.
pendulum swinging back and forth. Or do the extremes kind of meet? And the reason I'm saying that is like for FEMA and the help, the assistance that is expected from the federal government.
Right.
I don't think there's much difference between Republicans and Democrats anymore with that.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah,
We want big government, but in different ways.
exactly. Yeah, so it's just like. You can't-
So is it like saying like the Republican and Democrat part doesn't matter, it's the conservative and liberal that does?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of Democrats and Republicans that are more towards the middle, they have similar, like, I feel like they can sit in a room and have a healthy conversation, right? And if you get like an extreme liberal and an extreme conservative, you can't put them in the same room and have like a civil, healthy conversation.
Well, yeah,
For the most part,
unfortunately.
unfortunately,
I
you know?
Right? They could agree on FEMA.
Yeah.
Everybody should have help.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, I don't know. That kind of blows my mind. I like to think about that with the extremes, how they
Mhm.
can, with populism. Okay, yes, both of them have populist wings. They're just kind of different for what they do, what they want to do.
Yeah.
Good point. It's not the party, it's the ideology.
And so did they just like switch ideologies?
No,
Just
no.
this one better.
Or bad.
That's the thing, right? Abiding conservatism in Texas. So I keep on saying that, abiding
Maybe-
conservatism.
Maybe it wasn't so much they switched ideologies, maybe it was more that the people in the middle, due to the circumstances like World War II or the Great Depression, then
Yeah.
they ended up swinging more one way.
Yeah,
You see, like,
True.
maybe all the what was it, the conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans, because of World War II and the Great Depression, you kind of needed that switch, I guess, then maybe they all kind of went more conservative, in Texas anyways. And that's why we had such a switch from Democrat to Republican.
it's gradual.
Right.
Yeah. You were gonna say something?
I was just gonna ask for the original name, because Democrat and Republican, now those words mean different things, like where do they come from? Where do they come from pre-Civil War?
Right.
Where do those words come from?
So this
For
is,
party names.
right, so remember when we were doing our constitution,
Yeah.
what were the two parties then?
Wasn't it?
Federalist and anti-federalist?
Yep. Good. And so the Federalists kind of petered out after 1800,
Yeah.
right? So what they call it, what was it, the era of good feelings or something?
Uh-huh.
Where we had only one party, which the anti-federalists had kind of morphed into the Jeffersonian Democratic Republicans, right? And so they were winning a lot of the presidential elections, so they were considered the one active party at the time. Right, but then
Didn't we have a Whig party at one point?
there was a Whig party, right? So the Whig party came about, good, yes, and they lasted for a little while, right? And then the Jeffersonian Democratic Republicans, just with, I think Jackson's one shortly Democrats. Yeah. And then the Whig Party, that kind of faded out, and then the Republicans came out of that.
So it's kind of all the same thing, just under different names due to the era.
It could be, but remember, Federalists, they're starting out
Yeah.
big government. That's Hamilton.
It's the pendulum.
So-
We went from big government to little government, so then the other party wanted the opposite, and then, I don't know, it just goes back and forth.
You could think of it that way, sure, yeah.
Because wasn't Jeffersonian, like, kind of more in line with Federalists? Like, in like, wanting,
Well, have you seen Hamilton the musical?
no.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all seen Hamilton? Oh, you know
Yeah.
it, okay, good. So, remember
I
Hamilton?
don't know how much I remember.
So he got in good with George Washington when he was his Treasury Secretary, right? And so he convinced George Washington to establish a Bank of the United States and to grow government, whereas Jefferson was going, we want to be human farmers here. We just want to take care of our land and less government involvement and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, you're right. So that
Like,
was
the Democrats are a little,
genesis.
I don't know.
So does it even matter to be a Democratic or a Republican?
That label,
So it doesn't
it's a
matter.
label. And how much
It's tribalism, you know? A lot of people who maybe are in the middle, they want to feel part of a tribe, and so they go with one way or the other. They don't, half of them don't even look at who. I've seen TikToks where people are telling their stories of, like, I went to the polls today, and the lady next to me asked, like, who Donald Trump, like, it's like crazy stuff, and I'm like, how do people not know? But anyways, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I think it's a really good point that y'all are making. It's the ideologies that kind of traverse across these two major party systems that we have because of what law? That, two-party system, because of the characteristics that we have.
Oh,
Divergers
divergers.
law, very good. So just, who are the coalitions comprising the parties? Sometimes they swing conservative, sometimes liberal.
Is
Cool,
this a
cool, cool.
question?
So, of course, during the Civil War, the Republicans were the Liberal Party.
Questions that are
Democrats
rhetorical
were
or like
I guess
actual?
because those were the people with a lot of power at the time, that wing of the party. That addressed what you were saying at all? Okay.
Like, we need it more.
Good, so,
Made sense, I think.
good. Okay, so, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, because there's the Jeffersonian part, so why don't we just, like, redo the name? Because this is like historically, like, I feel like most people wouldn't understand. I'm understanding what you're saying, and I can't grasp it because I'm like, why not just change the name? It's just like a vehicle at this point, so
Yes.
why not just change the name to the current issue, which is like, I feel like this election was super divisive, so do you think that they're gonna like the Trump party at this point? Like, why not just change? Because it's not
I mean,
Republican.
it kind of was.
It's not Republican and conservative. I mean, Republican and
Yeah.
Democratic.
It's more based off of voter. I see what you're saying.
Because then it would be more time accurate too.
Yes,
That's my
no, it's a
question.
really good point you're making.
Maybe we're coming to that head. Like, I feel like with each, because we clearly had multiple different parties. They're all different variations of the same thing, but under different names. But each one of them came to like this like high pressure moment, just like how we just had with
Yes.
the election. And then maybe that's when you see the change happen, like with the Federalists turning to the Whig, like the Jefferson and Hamilton. That was like a big high pressure situation. Same with Jackson.
Yeah.
Whenever he switched, and then it switched to the Democrats, and then same in whenever Republicans and Democrats switched in Texas. Like, it's like these high pressure situations,
So is that
and it moves,
So
it
is-
changes.
so is that kind of why it's like hard to put a new party in because these two are just vessels for ideology? So then that would mean you could say the Green Party is conservative and they would be the new Republicans.
They're not necessarily.
But kind of, because RFK is now part of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
He was the Green Party.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
So it's kind of
Yeah. So I think coalitional parties, yeah, what is the ideology? And sometimes they can be so different within the same coalition. Yeah, but and then across the coalitions, it's us versus them, so even if there was some overlap between them, you have to pick a side now. The moderate doesn't work very well. And that's what that Forward Party was trying to address, those people who think that way, that maybe there are moderates out here and that we do want to work together, and didn't do so.
that's because they have the smallest voice, because they're not
Yes.
crazy. Like, you know what I mean? I just mean, like, I feel like the people, okay, look at your pendulum, right? Look at your pendulum. The
Yep.
voices you hear are the ones on the top, right?
Yep,
You don't
yep,
ever
yep.
hear the ones in the middle.
Nope, you're right. Because it
Even
doesn't
though,
attract
even
attention.
though it might be the minority, but they're still the voices you hear because they're the loudest voices.
Yes. Great point. And so, when you see those ads, they're saying our country is going to hell in a handbasket.
It's not true,
It's
but
not true.
It's like,
yeah.
So they're trying to get the media attention, right? It's the clicks and the
Yes.
posts and all that. What happened? Yeah.
That means you didn't understand
Real.
what you said.
Okay,
What blank were we
got
on?
it?
I don't know, like, that was fun.
You know,
So-
right?
Anyway, I was talking about New Deal and civil rights. So we had the civil rights movement with African Americans, with Hispanic Americans, with women, and then that court, the Earl Warren Court, was also expanding rights for people who've been accused of crimes. So the defense side of the equation, they were also saying, you know, like Matt v. Ohio, you had to make sure you have a warrant before you collect evidence, or it can't be used in court against you. Things like that. Gideon v. Wainwright. If you've been accused of a crime where you could have some jail time, you have to have a counsel represent you. So the Supreme Court were making these decisions that were considered very liberal decisions that were in favor of desegregation, in favor of the people who've been accused of a crime. And then one of those was, Connecticut, Griswold v. Connecticut, where Connecticut had a law where contraception could not be dispensed at drugstores. You couldn't sell contraceptives. It was a big Catholic presence in the state. So they overturned that. And then that led to the penumbra of rights, the shadow cast by the First and the Fourth and various amendments that then led to Roe v. Wade. So this was the Earl Warren Court. And I think, you know, that was part of the concern about what is going on with one part of the country. And then Nixon, who ran for president in 1968 and won, he said, I am speaking for the silent majority, these people who are very concerned with the direction of the country and with FDR policies, because the presidents after FDR, Truman and then Kennedy and LBJ, those Democratic presidents, were building on the New Deal programs and expanding them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people were kind of concerned about that, which meant that in 1952, when Dwight D. Eisenhower was running as a Republican presidential candidate, that our governor, Alan Shivers, decided we need to vote for Eisenhower instead of the Democratic candidate because he was considered too liberal. So he convinced Texans to support a Republican candidate for president, which was unusual because we were a Democrat predominant state. Right? That would be like it kind of happened now. It's like, whoa, something changed. And so we voted for Eisenhower both times he won in the 50s, and that was the president. But here at the state level, we were voting for Democrats still because they were the predominant party. And then that was broken with the election of U.S. Senator, remember who? Republican, who was elected because he was running against like 17 Democrats.
Wait, wasn't it? Was it Towers?
It was Tower, yep, John Tower, very good. So we elected a Republican, but of course it was kind of an unusual circumstance that was described in your book. So we elected a Republican senator. That'd be like electing a Democratic senator right now. Okay, so that was interesting. And then we elected a Republican governor in 1978, the first Republican governor since Edmund Davis during Reconstruction. You see just this Republican and the majority of Nixon, and then the Conservative Christian Coalition started saying, y'all need to vote for Republican candidates. So they started endorsing Republicans, and just all of this was just building this coalition of Republicans and taking those conservatives in the Democratic Party and making them change their party label to win elections.
That's interesting. And
Isn't
it's a
it?
very tumultuous time.
Yep.
Like the 60s, 70s.
Right. You're right.
There's a lot. I mean, you had in the 50s and 60s, you had JFK, and then all the race, what was it? The space races and all that. And honestly, it's interesting too to think about, because I feel like I forget JFK was a Democrat, because I feel like a lot of his policies at that time were more like today's Republican, like strong military government, like
Yes.
stances.
So like Bay Pigs.
Yes,
You're
Bay
talking
Pig.
about. Yes, but yet he had, was it Great Society was LBJ, New Frontier was JFK, which was also, he was trying to get civil rights passed.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he was assassinated before that was done, so
Mhm.
that was one of the first things LBJ decided to do when he became president, is I'm gonna
Mhm.
make sure this gets passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting, if y'all go down to Austin, the LBJ library,
Mhm.
fascinating, they have his archives, they have recordings of him on the phone, talking with these people who were in charge of the committees in Congress and trying to burst civil rights out of committee so they could vote on it. Yeah, so it's really interesting. So, okay, so 1980, who was the president elected in 1980?
Reagan.
Reagan. And we voted for Reagan. And then y'all know clean sweep 88, when our Supreme Court justices flipped from Democrat to Republican control. And it just was just piece by piece, the Republicans are taking over. But this is because those conservative Democrats moved to the different party, realignment.
I'm sorry, who was the 1961 senator?
Oh, John Tower, Senator Tower, John Tower. And then since 1996, every statewide official has been Republican.
That's pretty recent.
Pretty recent.
Really in the scope of history.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
It
not
is.
that long ago.
No, I mean, and that's a point that I try to drive home, is that we've been Democrat control for most of our history in this state,
Mm-hmm.
but it was conservative Democrat control. And now it's conservative Republican control. It's dividing, conservative. So when you have a state, and so we've had one party dominance for most of our state's history, Democrat or Republican. When you do that, think about it, you have one party, and we're just going to focus in on Erath County, because urban areas are different. If you think, well, one party dominance in Erath County, you know which party that would be? Republican, right. So we have Republican dominance in this county. What happens to competition during primary elections, do you think?
Decreases.
It would decrease during a primary?
Oh wait, like competition
It would
between.
increase, right? Because they know that the Republican primary winner is more than likely going to win the election.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think you could make an argument, oh no, people won't step up to challenge, but I just was amazed when Shelby Slauson won the primary, and the incumbent had all those challengers that were willing to step up and try to replace him. It was fascinating to me. So, when you have a primary, that's when you get your choice. Which of these party candidates do you want representing you? In general elections? You're in Erath County? Sheriff? Running for his position? Do we have much to worry about for the Republican candidate? So you can see that might decrease turnout in the general election, because you kind of know who's going to win already. This is when you have one party dominance in an area. And of course, redistricting feeds into that, and any cause or consequence. because there's less turnout in general elections, and we know this, right? Remember Texas ranking for turnout?
Yes.
Yeah. So when people are not showing up and holding their officials accountable, when officials are not a little bit nervous that the voters might not reelect them, maybe they would be more attentive to what the voters want. Right. But when you're in a safe seat, you don't have to worry about it so much, and people aren't turning out, and you're not really worried about losing your seat, this opens up a space for interest groups to come in and influence policy. So interest groups may be representing the oil and gas industry. They're very powerful. Healthcare industry, another powerful interest lobby. The car dealerships used to be a powerful lobby.
Really?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
do
They
have
kept
to
Elon Musk
lobby
out of here.
for?
No
Oh.
Tesla factory in the state for years.
That's interesting.
Bruh.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know, y'all heard of Lady Bird Johnson, LBJ's wife, Lady
Mhm.
Bird? So her cause was highway beautification, and so when you see those blue bonnets along our highways, that's because of her. She planted them, and she had to take on the billboard lobby in order to do that. She had to stand up to them because they were trying to stop it.
What?
For
Really?
some
Why do
reason,
they
I don't know why,
care?
but that's, yeah. So, when you are not so worried about getting elected, organized interests step in and promote mobilization. So the NRA says, this is our candidate, you need to go vote for this candidate, and so people go vote for that candidate. It opens up that space where interest groups can have more influence, mobilizing people that support them. Then interest groups also offer expertise in model legislation. We talked about how legislators don't have a lot of time to draft bills. They don't have the expertise in all areas that they're going to be looking at or want to propose a policy about. So it's helpful to have somebody giving you the model legislation. The Koch brothers, Charles and David Koch, created an organization called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. And they would have conferences and invite state legislators from across the country to come to their conference. And they would just hand out model legislation. And so the legislators would use it. I mean, it was very handy. But of course, it was beneficial to the Koch interest. So that's an interest group, right? That's what they do. So, so that happens. Interest groups can contribute campaign funds, money, but they can also use independent expenditures to assist campaigns. Independent expenditures, which are spending outside the campaign. If you saw some of those ads that you're wondering who in the world is making this ad, and it wasn't the candidate, it's an independent expenditure.
Would that be like the ones that that don't say backed by?
Yes, that's it, exactly. So if it's a candidate's campaign producing the ad,
I agree with this message.
I agree with this
Yeah.
message, correct,
Yeah.
correct. The others, some entity, some interest trying to really shake you up and want you to go vote. All right, thank you. Enjoyed that, you guys. The action plan that is part of your report, and I want to look at the report in just a minute, has two more elements to it. You focused on the first two last week, so I wanted to go over here before we move on and talk about the action plans. I posted an example of an action plan. It's an announcement that I made earlier this week. That's not getting bigger, but hopefully you can see it's very concise. It could be one paragraph or two paragraphs. It doesn't have to be a lot of writing. Succinct, clear, specific sentences are what I'm looking for in this action plan. And I did not make that clear to you guys last week, so I wanted to make sure that I did this week to show you kind of what it looks like for those action plans.
And then that is for our final report, not
That-
for the AI thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, your AI assignment is due Sunday night. Yeah, and that's using AI, right? And then you're evaluating it.
Right.
Yeah, within your topic area. This is just it's an action plan, and it's just part of that report that I'm asking you to submit in a couple weeks. So this is kind of the conclusion, so it's really kind of wrapping up. All right, this is what my research has shown me about this topic. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. This is how it needs to be addressed. This is who should address it, and this is how I can help. So the 4 elements of the action plan, which will go into your conclusion. But I think it's nice because it kind of pushes you to synthesize what you've learned across the worksheets instead of just, being very static. This is what I learned about opinions. This is what I learned about media and all that. Okay, so y'all have that. Oops. To the instructions. So you're going to use all 4 worksheets, and feel free to use the political parties one if you do that one. Read my comments that I have made, especially in the rubrics, that will help you do well in the report. And I do look back at your worksheets to see if you address those comments, just to let you know. I take the time to write the comments, so I want you to read them. Yeah?
The one that you just showed us that was a few paragraphs, is that corresponding to this, or is that a separate assignment?
Well, this is in the report that you're going to be writing.
So we submit this separately and then put it in the report and submit it with the rest of the report later as well?
Well, you're submitting it as part of your discussion grade.
Oh.
So the first 2 are last week's discussion grade. The second 2 are this week's discussion grade that I'm going to give you time to write in just a minute. Yeah, so that's just discussion for me, but it's also hopefully helpful to you because then you're going to use this information and put it into your report. And it gives you a chance to talk about what you're seeing with people who are studying similar things in case you need to bounce ideas off of them, get some constructive criticism. And that's the thought. So I don't know if y'all have looked at these instructions yet. I posted them in the last week or so. You can use all the acceptable sources that you used in your worksheet, or you can add more. Feel free to do that. APA citation is the format that I want you to use. So that means parenthetical citations in your report, author name, comma, the year it was published, in parentheses, and then a references list at the back of the report that you list all those citations that you have used and give me the APA formatted reference like you've been doing in your worksheets. So the report is 4 to 5 pages double spaced. Parenthetical citations need to be used. The quotes are fine, you guys, but remember, they don't count as you're writing. That's somebody else's writing. So you can use a quote, but explain it in your own words to get credit for that. Quote is longer than 3 lines, then use offset quote format. Don't just go on. Sometimes reports have these very long quotes. And so you have an introduction, which is mostly taken from the media worksheet, background history worksheet, government documents, opinions, and then conclusion with the action plan. Okay, let's do 24th. Any questions? No? Okay. And there's that. An example, it's not a perfect report, but it's pretty good. And so you can see it's very clearly organized with the different subtopic headings, written clearly with paragraphs. One thing that is really hard for me to read is when you just have one long paragraph per section, because I can't figure out, okay, what exactly are you saying? So every time your thought changes, start a new paragraph, please.
Is there anything that people consistently mess up on that sticks out?
You know what I've noticed is maybe attributing the information where you should.
Okay.
Yeah, doing that. And those run-on paragraphs. And sometimes people forget the subtopic headings, which I don't know, that's like 10 points of the grade. It's really easy to put those in. So they forget that. They don't do a good job on the references list at the end.
You mean like the format of it, or like the references in general?
Well, so, I mean the quality of the references or just how many are used?
Like
how they're tied back to
Yeah.
what they're saying and also how they actually formatted it.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the content is not as much of a problem for me
Mhm.
usually, is the formatting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Like
where we're
not putting
deducting
it in
points.
APA.
Well, yeah, not doing APA format, especially like for the references. There's APA, everything's double spaced.
Mhm.
You have hanging indent.
Mhm.
It's alphabetized.
Mhm.
Those are things that I take points off
Okay.
mostly. So it's more to style
Right.
than content. Because if you have been doing your work, doing your research, looking at my comments,
Mhm.
taking that into account when you do your writing for this, good. It should be really easy, actually. You have a lot of it done.
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
making connections now. Okay. Oh, I like that. Okay, this is the last thing you wanted to hear. I know, this time of year. Another assignment. Yay. But that's what you're heading towards. Uh-huh.
Do the references need to be in alphabetical order?
Yes. Absolutely. That's one of my bugbears. They're not in alphabetical order. Okay, where am I gonna find it? It just makes it harder for me to find that reference. Okay. Now today, y'all are gonna work on the second half. I do have what you did before. I'm passing it to you with my comments. Please address those comments. And feel free to write on the back. Is that gonna be okay with everybody? Write on the back? Okay, super. So revise according to my comments and then address those. Uh-oh, only 15 minutes. Okay, do as much as you can.
This isn't gonna go well.
I use a very colorful pen.
Yep.
So much more fun.
Yeah, it's a little purple.
Go. It's my great grandma's name.
I feel the same way about references.
That's you?
Hmm?
I feel the same way about references.
What's your middle name? Is it your great grandmother's name?
I wanna know y'all's middle names.
Mine's Lorraine.
Oh, slave.
What's yours?
Wait, what?
Remember, this is, I'm not
Rose.
trying to be mean, you guys, seriously, it's just constructive criticism, all right, it's just kind of blunt. Some
Yes,
things are
ma'am.
terrible.
No, I put that.
Mine is Evelyn.
That's not yours, it's ours. Emily. Emily, I'm sorry. Not have you memorized yet?
Did she underline something? I wonder
Oh,
what she
yeah.
underlined.
I don't know. Mine's just bad. I feel like I just didn't know what I was saying. I think it's just like your main points, maybe. But I don't know. I think I also just probably didn't know what I was saying.
So y'all wanna get in your groups real quick, or just stay where you are and work?
Stay here.
Stay?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might take less time.
Yeah, it's true.
I just have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to know, like, why you underlined it. Was that
Oh.
just, like, you thinking out loud? I don't know if there's, like, a comment supposed to be.
Right, no, that's,
Why you underlined it?
no, yeah, that's an important statement that I
Okay,
see, and
okay.
so that, yeah, I just underline as a
Okay.
read.
Perfect. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Oh, right. start with one, and I don't have any additional papers, I forgot, so, okay, good.
So number 4, it's answering like what I can do as a citizen, like by myself to influence change.
Exactly, so, right, but the by yourself, it may, so yes, what you can personally do, but then maybe it's forming a group where you're going to have collective action, a lot of people, or you're gonna join a group, be part of that, so, yeah.
no, they really do, so it's like, select one, yeah, but that's, okay. But yeah, good thing you know, I think you know a lot, like, right.
They're all so similar.
Well, they're all kind of trying to get at the same problem in different ways. Which is awesome. I mean, I think since the legislature's evolved into the way which is, that might be hard to sell. And then again, versus different, because then it brings it to.
That's true.
So, I think you have to let people find. Yeah. So, another way around that, if you are thinking creatively about ways to address that without having to straight head on.
I guess I'll get
Let's see, sure, yes, please turn them in the next minute or two, which is what you've got. You guys, it's not good. Y'all mind taking them with you and bringing them back to me later? Like, next Monday, just bring them to me, okay? Okay, thank you so much. All right, and I'll go ahead and take yours since it's done. If you're done, I'll take them. Okay.
Much better. Much better. I was stressing out. I was like, this is so bad.
Well, yeah, right. Yes, because they're all together.
Because I have several and I feel like they're all like kind of just working together. Is that that's like little things that would overall solve it? Yes. So that's why I'm having a hard time. That's why I don't know, like, you know what really kills me?
I mean, they're all
Well,
good.
yeah,
They're all
some of it
good.
was just me adding
This
my
one
own personal
kills me.
opinion,
It's so
it
messy.
wasn't asked for, it's just I felt like it.
And that road depth will fall.
Picture of this.
I mean, you still.
Oh no.